Tommy, 8, sold lemonade to buy medicine for his sick mom. His bright yellow stand brought smiles to neighbors and hope to his family. Then cruel HOA Karen decided to stop him. She complained, harassed, and finally poisoned his lemonade to hurt children. But justice was watching from across the street. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. 8-year-old Tommy Martinez had the biggest smile in Willowbrook Heights. Every morning, he would wake up and look out his bedroom window at the corner where he dreamed of setting up his lemonade stand. His dark eyes sparkled with hope as he imagined all the neighbors stopping by, tasting his grandmother's secret recipe, and maybe earning enough money to buy his sick mother the medicine she desperately needed. Maria Martinez had been fighting lupus for 3 years. The medical bills were crushing their small family. Tommy's father, Carlos, worked 2 jobs, construction during the day and cleaning offices at night. Still, it wasn't enough. Tommy had overheard his parents whispering late at night about choosing between rent and medication. "Mommy," Tommy said one morning, tugging at his mother's sleeve as she sat at the kitchen table, looking pale and tired. "What if I could help? What if I could make money too?" Maria's heart broke seeing her little boy trying to solve grown-up problems. "Mi amor, you're just a child. You should be playing and having fun." "But Abuela taught me her lemonade recipe before she went to heaven," Tommy insisted, his small hands gesturing excitedly. "She said it was magic. She said it could make people smile even on their worst days." Carlos looked up from his morning coffee, dark circles under his eyes from another sleepless night of worry. "Son, that's very sweet, but please, Papa, just let me try. The neighborhood kids always ask for my lemonade when they come over. Mrs. Chun from down the street said it's the best she's ever tasted." After much discussion, Carlos and Maria agreed to let Tommy try. They helped him build a small wooden stand, painted bright yellow like sunshine. Tommy carefully wrote "Tommy's Magic Lemonade $1 on a colorful sign. His grandmother's recipe was simple but special: fresh lemons, pure cane sugar, a hint of mint, and what she called the secret ingredient, love. The first day was magical. Tommy set up his stand at the corner of Maple Street and Pine Avenue, right at the edge of their front yard. The morning sun cast a golden glow over everything as he squeezed fresh lemons and stirred his mixture with dedication. Mrs. Chin was his first customer. She took one sip and her face lit up with genuine surprise. "Tommy, this is incredible. It tastes just like summer itself." Word spread quickly. By noon, Tommy had a small line of customers. Mr. Johnson, the mailman, stopped by and declared it the best lemonade in the county. The Williams family from 3 houses down bought 4 cups for their kids. Even grumpy old Mr. Peterson, who never talked to anyone, shuffled over and left with a smile after tasting Tommy's creation. "This is wonderful," Tommy thought, counting his earnings. In just one day he had made $12. It wasn't much, but it was a start. For 2 weeks, Tommy's lemonade stand became a neighborhood treasure. Children would beg their parents to take them to the Magic Lemonade Boy. Adults would detour from their evening walks just to support the polite, hard-working child with the biggest dreams. Tommy was careful to keep his stand neat and tidy. He swept around it every morning, disposed of trash properly, and always thanked every customer with genuine gratitude. His parents watched with pride as their son showed responsibility and determination beyond his years. The money was adding up. Tommy kept every dollar in a special jar labeled Mommy's Medicine Fund. After 2 weeks, he had saved $47. It still wasn't enough for the expensive medication, but it was progress and hope. That's when Karen Whitfield noticed. Karen was the self-appointed queen of the Willowbrook Heights Homeowners Association. A woman in her 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair and an expensive car, she spent her days patrolling the neighborhood looking for violations of the HOA rules. Her own house was immaculate, not a flower out of place, not a blade of grass too long. She believed that property values were more important than people, and that rules existed to be enforced without exception. Karen had been away for 2 weeks visiting her sister in another state. When she returned and saw Tommy's cheerful yellow stand, her face twisted with disgust. "Absolutely not," she muttered, pulling out her phone to take pictures. "This is a clear violation of Section 15.3, no commercial activities on residential property." She marched straight to the Martinez house and pounded on the door. When Maria answered, still in her pajamas because the lupus had been particularly bad that day, Karen's expression showed no sympathy. "Mrs. Martinez, your son's little business needs to shut down immediately. This is a residential neighborhood with strict HOA guidelines." Maria, confused and still weak from her morning medication, tried to explain. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Tommy is just selling lemonade. He's trying to help our family. I don't care what sob story you have, Karen snapped. Rules are rules. Commercial activities are prohibited. This stand comes down today, or I'll report you to the city and you'll face serious fines. But he's just a child. A child running an illegal business. Karen's voice was ice cold. You have until tomorrow morning to remove it, or there will be consequences. That evening, Tommy came running inside, tears streaming down his face. His lemonade stand had been vandalized. The beautiful yellow paint was scratched, his sign was torn, and someone had poured soap into his lemonade pitcher. Papa. Someone hurt my stand. Tommy sobbed into his father's arms. Carlos examined the damage, his jaw tightening with anger. The scratches looked deliberate, and the soap in the pitcher was clearly sabotage. This wasn't random vandalism. This was targeted. Who would do this to a child? Maria whispered, her heart breaking for her son. The next morning, Tommy bravely cleaned up his stand and prepared fresh lemonade. He had worked so hard and his customers were counting on him. Mrs. Chin had promised to bring her bridge club by that afternoon. But when Tommy went outside to set up, Karen Whitfield was waiting. I thought I made myself clear, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. This illegal operation stops now. Please, Mrs. Whitfield, Tommy said, his small voice trembling but determined. I'm just trying to help my mama. She's very sick and the medicine costs a lot of money. Karen's face showed no emotion. That's not my problem, child. Rules are rules. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. Yes, this is Karen Whitfield from the Willowbrook Heights HOA. I need to report an ongoing commercial violation at 1247 Maple Street. The next few days were a nightmare for the Martinez family. First came the official HOA violation notice with a threat of daily fines. Then the city inspector arrived, responding to Karen's complaint about unsafe food service operations. The inspector, Mr. Davidson, was a kind man who clearly felt uncomfortable with the situation. He examined Tommy's setup and found nothing wrong. Everything was clean, fresh, and properly maintained. But Karen had called in favors and put pressure on the city office. I'm sorry, son, Mr. Davidson told Tommy quietly. Your stand is perfectly safe, but without proper permits, I have to ask you to close it down. The permits would cost more than you could ever make selling lemonade. Tommy's world crumbled. He had been so close to helping his family, and now it was all being taken away by a woman who seemed to have no heart at all. But Karen wasn't finished. That weekend, she organized what she called a neighborhood cleanup day. She recruited 3 other HOA board members and went through the neighborhood with a fine-tooth comb, looking for any violations on properties that had supported Tommy's stand. Mrs. Chin received a violation notice for her garden gnomes being non-conforming decorative items. The Williams family was cited for their children's bikes being stored in the front yard. Mr. Peterson got a notice for his American flag being slightly faded. The message was clear: support the Martinez family and you'll pay the price. Tommy, heartbroken but not defeated, decided to try one more time. He moved his stand to the very edge of their property line, technically on public sidewalk space. He hoped this would satisfy Karen's interpretation of the rules. For 3 days, everything seemed fine. Tommy's loyal customers found him at his new location, and slowly, his hope began to return. Karen watched from her window, her anger growing. This child was making her look foolish, finding loopholes in her perfectly ordered world. She needed to end this once and for all. On Thursday morning, Tommy set up his stand as usual. He had prepared extra lemonade because Mrs. Chen's bridge club was coming by, and the mail carrier had promised to bring his co-workers for a treat. Around 10 o'clock, Tommy stepped inside to use the bathroom and get more cups from his mother. He was gone for less than 5 minutes. When he returned, he noticed something strange. The lemonade looked different somehow, cloudier than before. But he had customers waiting, so he didn't think much of it. The first sign something was wrong came when little Sarah Williams took a sip and immediately started crying. It tastes yucky, she wailed, spitting the lemonade onto the ground. Then Mr. Peterson tried it and his face contorted in disgust. Son, something's wrong with this batch. Tommy tasted his own product and nearly gagged. The lemonade was bitter and had a strange chemical taste that burned his throat. Whatever had been added to it was not meant for human consumption. As word spread, parents became panicked. Mrs. Williams rushed Sarah to the pediatrician. Mr. Peterson called poison control. The neighborhood was in chaos, and Tommy stood in the middle of it all, tears streaming down his face, not understanding how his grandmother's magic recipe had become something harmful. Carlos arrived home from work to find his son sitting on the front steps, crying inconsolably. The lemonade stand was surrounded by concerned neighbors and parents demanding answers. "What happened here?" Carlos asked, his protective instincts immediately activated. "Papa, I don't know." Tommy sobbed. "I made the lemonade just like always, but something happened while I was inside. Everyone got sick." Maria, despite her weakness, came outside to support her family. The scene was heartbreaking. Their 8-year-old son was being treated like a criminal for something he clearly didn't do. Mrs. Chin, bless her heart, spoke up. "Carlos, Maria, we all know Tommy would never hurt anyone. Something's not right here." The other neighbors who truly knew Tommy nodded in agreement. This boy who always said please and thank you, who cleaned up after himself meticulously, who was just trying to help his sick mother, he would never deliberately harm anyone. That evening, Carlos took a sample of the remaining lemonade to his friend who worked as a lab technician at the hospital. The results were shocking. The lemonade contained high levels of household bleach, enough to cause serious illness, possibly even death if consumed in larger quantities. "Someone tried to poison children," the technician told Carlos grimly. This was deliberate. Carlos felt sick. Who would target his innocent son? Who would put children at risk just to make a point? What Carlos didn't know was that the entire incident had been witnessed. Judge Robert Harrison lived in the big house across the street from Tommy's lemonade stand corner. He was a respected family court judge, recently retired, who spent his mornings on his front porch reading the newspaper and watching the neighborhood come to life. Judge Harrison had been watching Tommy's lemonade stand from the beginning with growing admiration. He had seen the boy's dedication, his politeness with customers, his careful attention to cleanliness and quality. As someone who had spent 30 years dealing with troubled children in his courtroom, he recognized something special in Tommy Martinez. He had also been watching Karen Whitfield's campaign of harassment with growing disgust. On the morning of the poisoning, Judge Harrison had been sitting on his porch as usual when he saw something that made his blood boil. Around 9:45 a.m., while Tommy was inside his house, Karen Whitfield had walked quickly to the lemonade stand, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and poured something from a small container into Tommy's pitcher. Judge Harrison had immediately grabbed his binoculars to get a better look, but Karen had already finished and was walking away rapidly. He watched as she disposed of the container in her own garbage can and hurried back into her house. 20 minutes later, when the chaos erupted and children started getting sick, Judge Harrison knew exactly what had happened. Karen Whitfield had not just violated HOA rules or been unreasonably harsh, she had committed a serious felony that could have killed someone. Judge Harrison spent that evening gathering evidence. He retrieved the container from Karen's garbage, a small bottle of household bleach, still with her fingerprints on it. He wrote down everything he had witnessed with precise detail, including exact times and descriptions. But Judge Harrison was a wise man who understood that justice required more than just his testimony. He needed to build an unshakable case. The next morning he visited Carlos Martinez. "Mr. Martinez, my name is Robert Harrison. I live across the street, and I witnessed what happened to your son's lemonade yesterday." Carlos looked up from his morning coffee, exhausted from a sleepless night of worry. "You saw someone tamper with Tommy's stand?" "I saw Karen Whitfield poison your son's lemonade," Judge Harrison said quietly. "And I can prove it." For the next hour, Judge Harrison explained what he had witnessed and showed Carlos the evidence he had collected. Carlos felt a mixture of relief that his son was innocent and rage that someone had deliberately tried to harm children. "We're going to stop her," Judge Harrison said firmly. "But we need to be smart about this. Karen Whitfield has been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, but now she's crossed a line into criminal behavior." Judge Harrison had a plan, but it required patience and careful execution. First, he visited every neighbor who had been targeted by Karen's recent HOA violations. He explained the situation and asked them to trust him with a coordinated response. Next, he contacted his former colleagues in the legal system, not to ask for special favors, but to ensure that when the time came, everything would be handled properly and by the book. Finally, he approached Tommy and his parents with a proposal. "Tommy," Judge Harrison said, kneeling down to the boy's level, "I know you're scared and hurt by what happened, but I need you to be brave one more time. Can you do that?" Tommy looked at this kind stranger who seemed to genuinely care about him. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to set up your lemonade stand one more time. But this time, we're going to be watching Karen very carefully." Carlos was immediately protective. "I won't put my son at risk again." "He won't be at risk," Judge Harrison assured him. "We'll have police watching from hidden positions. We'll have cameras recording everything. And the lemonade will be protected every second. Judge Harrison explained his plan in detail. They would set up the stand as a trap, giving Karen one more opportunity to reveal her true nature. But this time with witnesses and evidence that could never be disputed. The trap was set for Saturday morning. Tommy, nervous but determined to clear his name and help his family, set up his lemonade stand one final time. Hidden cameras were positioned in Judge Harrison's house and in the Williams' second-floor window. 2 plainclothes police officers sat in an unmarked car half a block away. Judge Harrison himself was on his porch, appearing to read his newspaper while actually watching every movement. Tommy's loyal customers began arriving early, having been quietly informed by Judge Harrison that today was special, though they didn't know exactly why. Karen Whitfield noticed the activity from her window. The sight of that yellow lemonade stand, back again after she thought she had ended it permanently, filled her with a rage that clouded her judgment completely. At 10:15 a.m., Tommy went inside to get more ice, just as he had been instructed. The trap was set. Karen emerged from her house, moving quickly toward the lemonade stand. She had prepared another bottle of bleach, more concentrated this time. She was going to end this problem once and for all, no matter what it took. She reached the stand and began pouring the bleach into the pitcher, muttering angrily to herself about teaching these people a lesson. "That's enough, Mrs. Whitfield." Karen spun around to find Judge Harrison standing right behind her, his phone recording everything. The plainclothes officers were approaching from both directions. Neighbors were emerging from their houses, having been alerted by text message. "You're under arrest for attempted poisoning, child endangerment and assault," Officer Martinez announced as he approached with handcuffs. Karen's face went white, then red with fury. "You can't do this to me. I'm on the HOA board. I was protecting property values." "Ma'am," Judge Harrison said calmly, "you just attempted to poison children on camera with multiple witnesses. Your HOA position won't help you now." The arrest of Karen Whitfield sent shockwaves through Willowbrook Heights. As the story spread, more victims of her harassment came forward. The local news picked up the story and it quickly went viral online. HOA Karen arrested for poisoning child's lemonade stand became a national headline. The legal proceedings were swift. With video evidence, multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and Judge Harrison's expert testimony, Karen's lawyer advised her to accept a plea bargain rather than go to trial. Karen Whitfield was sentenced to 2 years in prison for attempted poisoning and child endangerment. She was also required to pay restitution to all the families she had harmed and banned from serving on any HOA board for life. But the story didn't end with Karen's punishment. The media attention brought unexpected support for Tommy's family. A GoFundMe page set up by Mrs. Chen raised over $50,000 for Maria's medical expenses. A pharmaceutical company, moved by the story, offered to provide Maria's medication at no cost for 2 years. Local businesses offered Carlos better-paying jobs with health insurance. The mayor of the city presented Tommy with a special permit to operate his lemonade stand anywhere in the city limits, free of charge. 6 months later, Tommy's lemonade stand was thriving like never before. The city had helped him set up a proper small business, complete with health permits and a special Tommy's Magic Lemonade logo designed by a local artist. The stand had become a tourist attraction. Families would drive from neighboring towns to try the famous lemonade and meet the brave little boy who stood up to injustice. But the most important change was at home. Maria's health had stabilized with proper medication and reduced stress. Carlos had taken a better job with a construction company that offered excellent health benefits. The family had moved to a bigger house in a neighborhood with a kind HOA that welcomed Tommy's business. Judge Harrison had become like a grandfather to Tommy. Every Saturday morning he would stop by the lemonade stand for his weekly cup and to check on his favorite young entrepreneur. "You know, Tommy," Judge Harrison said one beautiful Saturday morning, "your grandmother was right about the secret ingredient." "The love?" Tommy asked, carefully measuring lemons for a fresh batch. "That's part of it. But I think the real secret ingredient is courage. You had the courage to try to help your family, and the courage to keep going when someone tried to stop you." Tommy smiled, the same bright smile that had charmed his first customers all those months ago. "Judge Harrison, do you think Abuela would be proud of me?" Judge Harrison looked at this remarkable child, who had faced adult cruelty with grace, who had turned a nightmare into a triumph, who had brought out the best in his entire community. "Tommy, I think she would be the proudest grandmother in heaven." 3 years later, Tommy's story continued to inspire others. He had started a small foundation called Kids Helping Families that provided microloans and support to children who wanted to start small businesses to help their families. Karen Whitfield, after serving her sentence, left the state in disgrace. The Willowbrook Heights HOA rewrote their rules to focus on community support rather than rigid enforcement. They established the Tommy Martinez Community Service Award for neighbors who went above and beyond to help each other. Tommy, now 11, still ran his lemonade stand on weekends, but he also maintained a 4.0 GPA and had started teaching other kids how to start their own businesses. His mother's lupus was in remission, and his father had been promoted to construction supervisor. Most importantly, the community had learned that real property values aren't measured in perfect lawns and uniform mailboxes, but in the kindness, courage, and love that neighbors show each other. On summer evenings, Judge Harrison would sit on his porch and watch children play in the street while their parents chatted over lemonade from Tommy's stand. The neighborhood had become what it was always meant to be, not just a place where people lived, but a place where people cared for each other. And sometimes, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of an old woman's laughter on the wind, pleased that her magic lemonade recipe had done more than just make people smile. It had changed an entire community for the better. The yellow lemonade stand still sits on the corner of Maple Street and Pine Avenue, a bright reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can create the biggest changes of all. And every cup still tastes like summer, hope, and magic, just as Abuela's recipe intended. This story reminds us that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about protecting the innocent, supporting the vulnerable, and building communities where kindness triumphs over cruelty. Sometimes the sweetest victories come from the smallest stands.